paper, I discussed various ways in which women are discriminated against in our society. I will now focus on one theme, reproductive rights. In order to sustain my argument, I put forward the following thesis. To be truly equal in society, women need to be in control of their reproductive choices. This includes full access to abortion and birth control, free from government interference and social stigma. Reproductive rights deal with the rights that an individual has in terms of reproduction and reproductive health. It is the right of all couples and individuals to decide on their own volition when, how many, and at what intervals to have children, and to be able to obtain information relating to reproductive health. They also include the right of all individuals to make decisions concerning reproduction free from discrimination and violence. Reproductive rights for women are an issue of life and death, and not simply a matter of choice. While nothing can change the biological realities of human reproduction, allowing women the right to determine how, if, and when they become pregnant plays a major role in how they function individually and collectively in society, and greatly supports their fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Legal, social, and political systems must be in place which will provide women universal access to professional reproductive medical care if women are ever to be considered truly equal in society. In the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, the Supreme Court ruled that women, in consultation with a physician, have a constitutionally protected right to have an abortion in the early stages of pregnancy, free from government interference. However, Congress has barred the use of federal Medicaid funds to pay for abortions, except when the woman's life would be endangered or in cases of rape or incest. 17 states use public funds to pay for abortions for some poor women, but only 4 do so voluntarily. The rest do so under a court order. American society remains deeply divided on the issue of abortion, and social stigmas attached to abortion manifest themselves in economic and political obstacles to universal abortion access. Alright, here are some statistics. Nearly 1/2 of pregnancies among American women are unintended, and 4 in 10 of these are terminated by an abortion. Basically, 40% of unintended pregnancies end in abortion. That means 22% of all pregnancies, excluding miscarriages, end in abortion. That's a big number. But are all abortions the same? No. 40% of providers offer very early abortions, even before the first missed period, and 96% offer abortion at 8 weeks from the last menstrual period. 67% of providers offer at least some second trimester abortion services, which is 13 weeks or later, and 20% offer abortion after 20 weeks. Only 8% of all abortion providers offer abortions at 24 weeks. Clearly, abortion is a reality in the issue of birth control in America today, and yet the number of U.S. abortion providers declined 2% between 2000 and 2005. Access to adequate medical facilities is not universal for all women who need or desire an abortion. This graph depicts the various stages at which women choose to terminate their pregnancy. The majority of women, about 61%, choose to terminate their pregnancy at approximately 9 weeks after their last menstrual period. About 18% choose to terminate their pregnancy at 9 to 10 weeks, about 10% at 11 to 12 weeks, 7% at 13 to 15 weeks, 4% at 16 to 20 weeks, and about 1% at 21 weeks after their last menstrual period. The most controversial of abortions, over which the majority of the political and social stigma are derived, are those 21 weeks or more, which only constitute little more than 1% of the total number of abortions conducted in America. Isn't it odd that an issue of such significance is being driven by such a small statistical proportion? Why is it that this issue can be driven by such a small statistic? Let's take a look at the legal foundation of abortion in America today, the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. The reason why this small statistic can drive this issue is that Roe v. Wade itself is fundamentally flawed. Roe v. Wade continues to be the legal foundation upon which reproductive rights are protected in the U.S. today. However, social obstacles, driven by economic and political factors, strongly influenced by religion-imposed morality, prevent universal access to adequate birth control and abortion. As a result, Reproductive rights are not fully protected in the U.S. today. One of the reasons these issues are alive today is that Roe v. Wade is controversial not only in content but in substance. The biggest problem with Roe v. Wade is Roe v. Wade itself. Many critics, including some current Supreme Court justices, such as Ruth Ginsburg and Justice Stevens, point out that Roe v. Wade was based more on an arbitrary medical opinion of Justice Blackmun and not constitutional reasoning. Blackmun's viability criteria, stating that abortion was permissible any time before a certain point in the third trimester, ranging from anywhere between 24 weeks to 28, has been bypassed so that even babies delivered before the first trimester are considered viable. So where's the constitutional argument other than the Supreme Court ruling? There is none. Roe v. Wade establishes abortion as a fundamental right. Fundamental right as a concept is key to issues pertaining to constitutional law. Some rights are stated, such as those set forth in constitutional amendments. Others are implied, such as those set forth in legal precedent. But in every case, the arguments put forward should be founded in legal justification. Roe v. Wade is not argued legally, but rather based upon medical science. In many ways, Roe v. Wade harmed the case of abortion because it intervened at a time when social movements were afoot in America to create a solid foundation of legislative law supporting abortion. Roe v. Wade made this movement moot by providing this right away. But this right is not founded upon solid legal grounds, but rather outdated medical science. Thus, the reasoning behind Roe v. Wade continues to be left open for attacks by those who oppose abortion in America. Education about the importance of reproductive rights remains the best means of achieving societal change. The reasons women give for having an abortion underscore their understanding of the responsibilities of parenthood and family life. 3/4 of women cite concern for or responsibility to other individuals. 3/4 say they cannot afford a child. 3/4 say that having a baby would interfere with work, school, or the ability to care for dependents. And 1/2 say that they don't want to be a single parent or are having trouble with their partner and spouse. Empowerment through the accumulation of knowledge remains the best defense against policies founded on fear and ignorance. Here's a video from a New York Times article regarding some possible ways that awareness is being raised on the issue of abortion. This video is a pro-abortion ad which features a comedian who starts making a joke about what medical services are provided under the healthcare plan, and then the joke turns serious when she brings up abortion.
So I think laughter is the best medicine. That's because I can't afford health insurance. I wrote a healthcare reform joke. You want to hear it? So this woman goes to her doctor. She says, "Doc, my back is killing me. Does my insurance cover a breast reduction?" And the doctor says, "Yes, it does." Okay, a guy goes to his doctor. He says, "Doc, I can't breathe out of this side of my nose. Does my insurance cover a nose job?" And the doctor says, "Yes, it does." Another woman goes to her doctor. She says, "Doc, I'm 11 weeks pregnant. My baby has anencephaly. Parts of its brain and skull are missing. It's fatal. Does my insurance cover an abortion?" And the doctor says, "Yeah, it does."
Don't let Congress ban abortion coverage. Millions of women already have.
In conclusion, America embraces equality for all. And that being said, when it comes to reproductive rights, there is an unequal burden placed by both biology and society on women, which interferes with their true equality. A critical factor in creating the conditions of true equality lays in reproductive rights. The more control a woman has over her reproductive choices, the more control she has over her life. Still more needs to be done to educate all Americans on the importance of reproductive rights, and the need for laws and infrastructure to make theory reality for all women. As flawed as it is, Roe v. Wade must be retained until which time society constructs the legal framework upon which true reproductive rights can be guaranteed by the rule of law. Education is key because legal change can only be derived from a society that has empowered itself through the accumulation of knowledge. The United States is a nation plagued with many forms of discrimination, from acts relating to different social classes, religious occupations, gender, and even an individual's own sexuality. However, a form of discrimination that is frequently overlooked yet still impacts our society on a day-to-day basis is police brutality. Here to speak to you more on this issue is Toby Berger.
So what I'd like to do is ask a question, because as a school superintendent, I've got to figure out the balance between what we offer in our schools on all of these subjects, and balance that with the need to educate the community, because I see a very strong connection. It isn't just a school issue, it's a larger community issue on each of your topics. So with that being said, I'm going to ask one question. I'd like each of you to try and answer it, okay? To what extent should we be working with families and community members on each of these areas? And what should we be doing as a school district? I'm talking about the Bethlehem School District. What should we do to try to expand this concept of educating people about these obvious issues? And I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I guess you need to basically be serious and say this is reality, these are issues, and then you need to start. Everyone can have their own opinion on those issues, but there needs to be a way, whether through like a class or like, you know, NCBI or something of that nature, to tell them this is the issue, this is what you can do about the issue if it's in your own opinion to do so. Like,
So embedding it within our
just to
instructional
yeah,
approach.
just if like the best solution is education for most of these issues, and for most of the young population, the easiest access to education you get is through your school. So the most effective method of educating the students on the issues would be through the school.
Vika, you said that there was a fundamental problem with Roe versus Wade. How would we fix that? I mean,
well, I guess the only way to be able to fix that problem would be kind of like go back and go through the steps of legislation that we skipped over, because during the period while the issues being like argued, there were social movements afoot in America that were leading towards legalized abortion. Like, it was going up through the system rather than the issue being bounced all the way to the top of the Supreme Court as being a major issue and then being legalized, and then they made it a fundamental right, but nobody at the bottom truly like agreed with it.
okay.
So I guess the only way would be to go back up through the system.
Vika, I'm glad you cleared something up for me from your paper in your presentation, because I was wondering, especially when you explained that you were really looking to improve on Roe versus Wade, maybe even, you know, get rid of it and make a better policy. Because your paper, that didn't come out very clearly. I'm thinking, are we, you know, is Roe versus Wade at risk of being, it's been the law for close to 40 years. And so now I kind of see where you were going. I was kind of thinking, this isn't really that timely. It's not, you know, yes, there are very vocal, but I think a minority opposition. But, you know, so your presentation, I think now I can understand where you were going in your paper, and I cleared it up.
I think that's a tough one. For me, it's really tough to think all the issues, and it's so complex. In your lifetime, I was thinking you're about 16 or so. In the next 60, 70 years, what have you, where do you see this headed? Like, when you're an old woman sitting in a chair somewhere, hopefully watching Wheel of Fortune or something. All right? I'd say Jack is still around, I don't know why. But anyway, while you're sitting there, I mean, where will we be as a country? Do you foresee a place down the road? This issue?
I believe that there will always be moral issues regarding abortion, but in terms of the legal issues for women who, I believe that hopefully someday women will have complete freedom of choice regarding abortion, and they'll no longer be or feel constrained the way they do now. So yes, to answer your question, I think that the situation will get better. However, the moral issues will always be like there, but that's the person's own individual opinions, and that shouldn't affect the choices of another woman.
Thank you.
How many people of the five of you, well, the other four of you, how many of you agree with, and be honest, with Jenny's position?
That there should be
That-
programs.
Yeah, in schools, mandated in schools.
I agree.
You guys agree? All right, one of you who agrees, put Dr. Tabano's hat back on. Last night, our president in his State of the Union talked about we're falling behind in math, we're falling behind in science, we're falling behind other countries, we're going to be number one. They actually stood up and started chanting, "We're number one," and the audience was a little awkward, but it's a little surreal. But he gets the phone call, "My child is being taken out of math and science class because of this program. Math scores are falling in this country." Da, da, da. How does he answer that question? Why is this more important than being in an academic class? I mean, these are schools, and we hear this all the time from parents. Like, there's too much other stuff, too many field trips, too many other things going on aside from sitting in a classroom and learning.
Well, like Jenny said in her presentation, people are seriously affected, negatively affected by the discrimination that's against homosexuals and gays and lesbians. And is being number one in, stats based on where we stand in education really worth the life of a kid? Like, I guess you have to look at it like that. Like, they can be, for the rest of their lives, things that they go through in high school can affect them, and years from now, I don't think it'll really matter where we stood in terms of, like, education's extremely important, but I believe that the welfare of the kids who are being discriminated against is more important.
And we'll get one more here for Vika. Do you know the difference between reactive and proactive?
Yeah.
Being reactive and proactive about something. You put a statistic up there, and I see this every time the abortion issue comes up there, that half of all pregnancies are unwanted.
Mm-hmm.
And getting an abortion to me seems more like a reactive approach
Than
to
proactive.
that issue.
Yeah.
What is a proactive step that we could start working on so that we don't have 50% of our pregnancies being unwanted?
Definitely education would be the most proactive solution, because if somebody knows that, well, first, I believe that if you educate people, there'll be less abortions, there'll be less need for abortions. So I guess to answer your question, the proactive solution would be education.